Whispers of the Ancients, Episode 14. The Zulu Kingdom, Spears of the South, approximately 1816 to 1897 CE. Segment 1. The Roar Beneath the Grasslands. Before empire clashed with empire, before rifles shattered shields, there was thunder in the tall grass, a ripple of warriors, barefoot and bold, and at their head a man with flame in his eyes. They called him Shaka. In the fertile green valleys of southeastern Africa, where the Drakensberg Mountains kiss the clouds and the Indian Ocean breezes rustle through acacia and sugarcane, a transformation was stirring. It was the early 19th century, and the scattered Nguni clans of the region, pastoralists and farmers, lived in small homesteads ruled by chieftains, their lives shaped by kinship, cattle and custom. But in the hills near present-day KwaZulu-Natal, a new force was rising. Not a kingdom yet, but a momentum. The son of a minor chieftain and a woman of lower status, Shaka Mfecane grew up on the edges of clan life, embittered, cunning, and observing. What he saw in the chaos of tribal feuds and skirmishes was not disorder but potential. A nation not of walls but of warriors, not of thrones but of thunder. Segment 2. Shaka Zulu. The storm forged in silence. Shaka's youth was marked by rejection. Born out of wedlock around 1787, his mother Nondi and he were exiled from their father's kraal. Shaka served in the army of the powerful Mfecane Confederation, under Chief Dingiswayo, a man who recognized his brilliance and nurtured it. When Dingiswayo was killed and the Mfecane were shattered, Shaka stepped into the vacuum through strategy, charisma and terror. He absorbed neighboring clans and forged a new identity, Zulu. He revolutionized warfare, gone with the throwing spears and loose formations. Shaka introduced the Ikwa, a short stabbing spear, and trained his men to fight in tight, disciplined ranks. He developed the buffalo horns formation, encircling, crushing, annihilating. But more than tactics, Shaka changed the psyche. He trained boys from childhood. He banned marriage for soldiers. He rewarded loyalty with cattle and rank and punished failure with swift execution. It was a harsh crucible, but from it emerged the most formidable army Southern Africa had ever known. Segment 3. The Rise of a Warrior Nation. By 1820, the Zulu Kingdom had grown from a minor clan of a few thousand to a militarized state of over 150,000 people and more than 40,000 warriors. Shaka built a new capital, Bulawayo, the place of the persecuted, and ruled from it like a general, not a king. He redrew tribal maps, broke old loyalties, and remade society in the mold of his will. Clans were uprooted and resettled. Chieftains were replaced by loyal commanders. He demanded tribute in cattle and warriors, and sent imperialist regiments on raids that destabilized the region. This period of upheaval, known as the Mfecane or Mfecane, saw mass migrations, famine, and warfare as clans fled or fought against the Zulu tide. Shaka did not just conquer land, he set fire to the social fabric of southeastern Africa. Yet in his own kingdom, there was discipline, unity, and innovation. Cattle herding was streamlined. Grain storage improved. Roads were cleared for regiments to march swiftly. And every victory fed the myth of Zulu invincibility. Segment 4. Thunder cracks in the sky, but thunder does not reign forever. In 1828, Shaka was assassinated by his half-brothers Dingane and Umhalangana. Weary of his increasing paranoia and cruelty after the death of his mother Nondi, his final years had seen mass executions, purges and grief-fueled madness. His killers left his body in an unmarked grave lost to time, yet alive in legend. Dingane inherited the spear, but lacked Shaka's fire. He sought legitimacy through rituals and pageantry, but his rule was stained by internal strife and growing external threats. The greatest of these came not from neighboring tribes, but from the white men moving inland from the Cape, the Voortrekkers. Segment 5. Collision with the Trek, Dingane and the Boers in 1838. Dingane's court received a delegation of Boers led by Piet Retief seeking land. Initially, Dingane agreed, but when he realized the threat posed by these armed settlers, he turned against them. He invited Retief to his kraal under the guise of diplomacy, then had him and his entire party executed. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The Boers retaliated with brutal efficiency. On December 16, 1838, at the Battle of Blood River, a Zulu force of over 10,000 warriors attacked the 174 trekkers encamped by a river bend. The Boers, fortified behind wagons and armed with muskets, suffered only a few injuries. The Zulus lost thousands. The river, by legend, ran red. Dingane's power was shattered. He fled north and was killed in exile. His half-brother Mfecane, who was allied with the Boers, took the throne. Segment 6, Mfacane's Compromise, a Zulu peace. Mfacane's reign 1840 to 1872 was long and relatively stable. He avoided large-scale warfare and so to rebuild the kingdom through diplomacy and cattle wealth. He maintained friendly terms with both Boers and British, though he played them off one another when possible. Under Mfecane, the Zulu Kingdom consolidated its boundaries. It was no longer expanding, but it was intact. Regiments still trained. Festivals still celebrated the king's might. But the thunder had softened to a rumble. His son, however, Cetshwayo, would awaken the storm once more. Segment 7, Inkatha and the Nation, binding the Zulu identity. The spirit of the Zulu nation was more than military drills or the command of Shaka's voice. It was woven into ritual, memory, and ancestral devotion. At the heart of this spirit lay the sacred concept of the Inkatha, a coiled bundle of grass imbued with symbolic power, said to contain the essence of the Zulu people. Hidden in a secure place and guarded by trusted hands, the Inkatha was not merely an artifact, but the living soul of the kingdom. Its sanctity was revered and its symbolism profound. In times of war and peace, in coronations and ceremonies, the Inkatha was the unifying center, the spiritual root that fed the collective consciousness of the Zulu. Shaka and later kings reinforced the centrality of the Inkatha as a means of forging a shared national identity, binding clan to clan, chief to king, ancestor to descendant. Oral traditions preserved by Zulu Izinyonga healers and Izimbonji praise poets exalted the Inkatha's significance, intertwining it with oaths of allegiance and stories of divine favor. Through the Inkatha, the Zulu were not just an army, they were a people chosen and sanctified. Segment 8, Storm Clouds Gather, the British Advance and the Fracturing of Unity. By the mid-19th century, storm clouds gathered on the southern horizon. The British Empire, emboldened by its annexation of the Cape and driven by the logic of imperial expansion, eyed the independent Zulu Kingdom with increasing suspicion. The Zulu strength once admired became a threat to British control in southern Africa. In 1879, under the command of Lord Chelmsford, British forces invaded Zululand. Their pretext was the refusal of Cetshwayo, the reigning king and nephew of Shaka, to disband his army and accept British authority. But beneath this pretext lay imperial ambitions and settler anxieties. The invasion would prove more difficult than the British anticipated. At the Battle of Eyes and Awana, a Zulu impi delivered a stunning defeat to the British, the worst loss suffered by the British army. Against an indigenous African force, it was a moment of defiance, a flame in the darkness of encroaching empire. But victory was short-lived. Superior British firepower, reinforcements, and attritional warfare eventually overwhelmed the Zulu resistance. By July 1879, the Zulu capital at Ulundi was razed, and the kingdom was shattered into 13 chieftaincies, each beholden to colonial administration. The once united Zulu nation was fragmented, its sacred order undone. Segment 9, the spirit that endured, resistance, legacy, and the rise of nationalism. Though the kingdom was politically broken, the Zulu spirit did not die. In the decades that followed British conquest, the memory of Shaka, the wisdom of the ancestors, and the songs of the Izimbonji continued to inspire resistance and pride. In the early 20th century, Zulu leaders like John Doe and Pixley Ka-Isika seemed descendants of those shaped by the kingdom, rose to advocate for African unity and rights. Doe would become the first president of the African National Congress ANC, a movement that would eventually lead South Africa toward the end of apartheid. Even in exile, in mines, and in segregated townships, Zulu cultural identity remained a source of strength. The memory of a time when black sovereignty stood all embodied in the Zulu Kingdom fueled political imagination and pride. In modern South Africa, the Inkatha Freedom Party IFP, formed in the 1970s under Mangosuthu Buthelezi, drew from Zulu traditions and Shaka's legacy. Though controversial and entangled in late apartheid-era conflict, it signified the enduring place of Zulu heritage in South Africa's political landscape. Segment 10, Stone Shield, and Song, remembering the Zulu Kingdom. Today, the name Zulu echoes far beyond the hills of KwaZulu-Natal. In films, music, military studies, and academic histories, the Zulu Kingdom is remembered as a symbol of African resilience and innovation. Visitors to South Africa can walk the grounds of Eisenderwana and Rorke's Drift or hear the rhythmic chants of Zulu war. Songs still performed in ceremonies and cultural festivals. Statues of Shaka dot the landscape, and his legacy is debated and reimagined warrior, unifier, autocrat, visionary. The Zulu language isiZulu remains one of the most spoken in South Africa, and its literature and oral tradition continue to flourish, from ancient Izimbonji to modern poets and performers. The voice of the Zulu has not been silenced. The Zulu Kingdom may have lasted only 8 decades, but its story continues. It is carved in memory like the assege of its warriors, stitched into fabric like the beadwork of its women, and whispered in the winds of Natal. And so, the tale of the Zulu spears of the South marches. On Segment 11, The Long Shadow of Ulundi. On July 4, 1879, the rolling grasslands near the royal kraal of Ulundi, seat of the Zulu kings, shook beneath the boots of thousands of British redcoats. It was the final act in a campaign that had stretched over 6 grueling months, one in which the British Empire, stung by early humiliations, now returned with vengeance in its stride. Facing them were the remnants of the once mighty Zulu, impus brave, disciplined, and blooded, but no longer the overwhelming force they once were. The Battle of Ulundi was not simply a military clash, it was the symbolic collapse of an age, as the British square formation held strong and their artillery mowed through the charging regiments. King Cetshwayo's vision of a sovereign Zulu state cracked and fell. Ulundi burned, its thatched structures reduced to ash by the conquerors, its royal palace and sacred enclosures torched as a message. The spear had met the rifle, and the spear had splintered. Cetshwayo was captured shortly thereafter, sent into exile, and the Zulu Kingdom, once feared from the Limpopo to the coast, was carved into colonial partitions. The proud polity that had defied the British Empire with such tenacity was now broken, its lands divided, its chieftains disempowered, and its people forced into new hierarchies not of their choosing. But even in defeat, the Zulu spirit did not die. Songs of valor and betrayal echoed across the hills. Women recited praise poems of Shaka, Dingane, Impondi, and Cetshwayo. The warriors who survived returned to their homesteads, heads held high. They knew they had faced down the greatest power on earth, and that their story would not be one of mere submission. Segment 12 echoes through the 20th century. In the years that followed, the Zulu people, like so many others in Africa, were subsumed into the structures of colonial rule. Natal became part of British South Africa. Missionaries spread Christianity. Schools were introduced, and land dispossession accelerated. The once dominant Zulu elite found themselves relegated to rural margins, their customs and governance systems labeled tribal, their heritage repackaged through European lenses. Yet the memory of the Zulu Kingdom endured not just in folklore, but in acts of resistance. The Bambatha Rebellion of 1906, sparked by colonial taxation, saw Zulu men once again take up arms. Though crushed, it became a lodestone for African nationalism. In the 20th century, the Zulu identity became a powerful symbol both politically and culturally. Leaders like Chief Albert Luthuli, a Zulu and the first African Nobel Peace Prize laureate, stood at the forefront of anti-apartheid efforts. Cultural revival movements resurrected traditional dances, songs, and rituals. And even as new political parties formed in modern South Africa, Zulu heritage remained a rallying cry for dignity, autonomy, and pride. Segment 13 of Spears and Symbols, Cultural Legacy. The Zulu Kingdom left more than a military legacy. Its cultural imprint on southern Africa is deep and enduring. The Zulu language remains one of the most widely spoken in South Africa. Traditional attire, especially the iconic leopard skin regalia of chiefs and the Isiklo hats of women, still graces ceremonies and festivals. Zulu beadwork, colorful, symbolic and intricate, tells stories of love, identity and history. The ceremonial dances and songs, like the vigorous Ndlamu war dance, continue to be performed at cultural gatherings and even in international events. Zulu praise. Poetry is ibongo, a powerful oral tradition, still honors ancestral heroes and critiques current leaders with sharp wisdom. Even in the realm of popular culture, the Zulu have made their mark. The 1960 film Zulu, though produced from a British perspective, immortalized the Battle of Rorke's Drift and stirred global interest in the kingdom's story. More recently, Zulu music, especially the Isaac Athamia style made famous by laddersmith Black Mombazo, has reached international audiences. Segment 14, The Zulu Today, Between Heritage and Modernity. Today, the descendants of the Zulu kings walk between worlds. South Africa is a constitutional democracy, yet it recognizes traditional leadership. The Zulu monarchy still exists with a ceremonial role and deep cultural resonance. In recent years, the royal house has seen its share of succession debates, but the idea of a Zulu king continues to captivate millions. KwaZulu-Natal remains a vibrant province, where modern cities like Durban sit side by side with rural homesteads, where gas towers rise over hills where impers once marched. Zulu heritage is taught in schools, displayed in museums, and embedded in the rhythms of daily life. Yet poverty, unemployment, and the lingering scars of apartheid remain real challenges for many. Still, the Zulu continue to draw strength from their past, not in longing for conquest, but in asserting identity, resilience, and community. The story of Shaka and his successors is not simply a tale of war and fall. It is a mirror for a people who weathered colonial storms and emerged not unchanged, but unbroken. Segment 15, Closing Reflections, The Kingdom That Roared. The Zulu Kingdom was not eternal, but it was extraordinary. Born in a crucible of conflict, it exploded onto the stage of history with a force few expected. Its kings ruled not through mere bloodlines, but through charisma, innovation, and command. Its warriors were more than soldiers, they were sons of the soil, defenders of a dream. From the forging of the Isegai to the burning of Ulunde, from the praises of griots to the ink of colonial pens, the Zulu Kingdom became a symbol not just of African strength, but of the dignity that no conquest could erase. Today, as the winds sweep across KwaZulu-Natal, they carry whispers of a time when the South thundered with spears and the world watched in awe. The Zulu Kingdom remains etched in stone, song, and spirit, a beacon of resilience, a lesson in unity, a legacy that still roars.